Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. It is the news, and sure, BlizzCon was last week. You might normally think that would mean there wouldn't be much to talk about. That's not so, because the patch 8.1 PTR was surprisingly large with a lot of great stuff in it. But first, do you know what's entirely unsurprising? That the Massdrop X New Force EDC from today's sponsor, Massdrop, is still my daily driver from the first time we worked together. Now, Massdrop are a group by website who have started doing their own collaborations with the best brands on special runs of products that are at a crazy value. So, the New Force EDC, it is just incredible. First, it sounds fantastic, better than anything I've seen at that price range before. And second, it's built like a tank with detachable cables. Yes, detachable cables. It comes with two, one braided and one with an inline mic, so if disaster ever strikes and a cable breaks, no worries. And for me, that's a really big peace of mind. So they sound awesome, they're comfortable, they're light, they're well built, detachable cables. There's a reason why they've sold over 10,000 of them. They are just incredible for the value. So a massive thanks to Massdrop for supporting the channel. Check out that link down in the description below, and let's get right into the news. So let's kick it off with what's undoubtedly the largest bit of news this week. Blizzard are nerfing experience requirements in World of Warcraft, like tremendously, really quite a lot. It's also something that's being targeted at the most salt-causing portion of leveling. So if you're a salt miner, hold on to your salt, because patch 8.1 seems to be focused at smoothing out the pain points in the game. Now, these experience nerfs start off at a modest 2.5% level 20, but by the time you hit level 25, it's 11.3%. And this continues up to a 25% reduction in XP requirements by the time you hit level 36, and then up to a massive 40% reduction by the time you hit 59. And that 40% holds until level 65. At which point it starts to decrease again, moving back to 25% by the time you hit level 80, and that 25% pretty much holds until level 110, meaning that yes, the Legion leveling process is also affected. This is a massive change, and it's one that's almost, well, certainly targeted at the main point of concern, which is 60 through 80 leveling. It's a bit rough, especially because, you know, you've got the Clash and Quest design languages. Wrath came a long way from Burning Crusade, but it still is old. Now, I do quite like Northrend, but that's something for another day. The 60 to 80 bracket, though, the one thing we do know is that had the most negative feedback for quite a few reasons. The quest design was kind of old, some of the mobs were a little bit too powerful so that it felt really slow, and generally it just wasn't really in lockstep with the revamped Cataclysm feel of leveling, or you know, the modern feel of leveling that you would have got past past the Northrend content. So overall, what you're getting here is, I'd say, maybe a 33% reduction in leveling time across the board, like overall, once you tally it up. And the interesting case is that, you know, with heirlooms plus this change, even thinking about the Legion content, because it also has a 25% nerf, well, if you're just quickly doing some invasions, you're going to rocket up the levels. Now, of course, Ian did mention at BlizzCon that the team are not happy about the leveling process in terms of rewards. That's pretty fair. Getting a level is not that eventful in live in comparison to, say, the classic demo even. Now, this doesn't really attempt to solve the problem, but the faster pace of leveling does increase the pace of reward. Now, Blizzard kind of floated the idea of a leveling squish, which is kind of interesting, but when you think about it numerically, it's not dissimilar to what they've done here, albeit maybe, you know, they haven't loosened up level zone restrictions anymore. Now, there is one lingering problem though, and that is mob scaling. It really is a little broken sometimes. Now, I was recently browsing Reddit, and somebody basically had a mob and a Legion mob. Both of their characters were level appropriate, and the mob and Legion mob had pretty much the same amount of health. So yeah, the level 86 character was fighting an enemy who had about the same health as a level 106 from Legion, which is really odd. It's a pity that, you know, it is taking them so long to realize their original goal of the leveling revamp. But when I think about it in terms of leveling speed, this might not be too different from how it used to be. And you've got to remember that while you may in the past have leveled quicker within a zone, because you used to out-level zones, well, you'd be running around, you'd have more travel time going between zones. Well, here you have a lot less downtime and a lot less travel time because you never out-level zones, which means that even if your leveling sometimes feels a little bit slower, it probably is like a more smooth pace. And I've got to wonder if after this change, if the leveling times just from pure questing are either maybe a little bit faster or pretty much the same, just that you benefit from not out-leveling zones and not having a whole bunch of those game design issues. But that's not all though, because patch 8.1 is, well, it's really giving you a massive amount of leveling tools. So yes, we have that big nerf. We also have a new experience potion that only works in Kulturas and Zandalar. It only gives you 10%, but at the end of the day, that basically does knock a level worth of experience off if you could get loads of them. Now, these currently come from two sources that we know of. First, a random reward for completing incursions, I believe, and second, I think they can be purchased with commendations as well from the new commendation vendor. Of course, those commendations are a new faction-specific currency that's being added in 8.1. So yeah, it seems like you're going to be getting that currency from like incursions and war fronts, and the new pot lasts for 60 minutes. Now, this is in addition to you being able to level through incursions, which, much like the Legion invasions, are a pretty strong leveling tool. Now, reading the tooltip, I'm not sure if this is going to apply to leveling through island expeditions, but if it did, then that would be really powerful, especially if you're, say, getting boosted by a twink character and you're maybe getting an expedition done like every 7 minutes. So, it's kind of interesting. Our ability to quickly level characters has gone up so much in this patch, and I mean, let's be honest, the leveling of this expansion was really quick anyway, so with these two changes combined, it's going to equal a whole bunch of new alts. Which is great because this patch also brings loads of alt-friendliness features. You've got your bind on account flight, flight books. You've got the Champion of Azeroth item level increase catch-up also coming in. And this kind of leads me to my next point. Beta's over, and I know people jokingly call this game beta for Azerite, and while maybe it's a bit jokey and facetious, there has been a lot of truth to it. Well, this expansion, it launched with rough systems that were poorly communicated. They're sort of full of holes and problems. 8.1's fixing a lot of that, or at least trying to. You've got your new Azerite ring, which gives you more choice. There's a bunch of new currencies to make it feel like you're, actually progressing rather than just doing content and hoping the RNG is in your favor. It seems like Blizzard know how this expansion was perceived, and that, this, say the bump in gear in the next patch is going to inspire a lot of new people to make alts, so maybe that's why they're making these leveling changes, kind of an acknowledgement that they've made an attempt to increase the quality of the endgame experience, and therefore they want people to be able to put more alts through that, because 8.1 undoubtedly is a far better game than 8.0. It's a pity it kind of played out like that, but at least we're getting to that stage, and I kind of think that's why they're pulling the trigger with some of these leveling changes so soon. Next up though, we've got something new about raid loot. Now, before you tune out, don't worry, this is actually pretty cool. So, Blizzard are adding a bunch of new items with the Siege of Dazar'alor, which seems pretty normal, it's what you'd expect, but well, like many bits of gear, some of these have stats, they have effects. It's all pretty normal, but here's what's different. They have additional effects that are fun. They're not random damage. This means that the trinket has a throughput effect, and it also has one of these fun effects. And then there's many bits of gear that would not normally have effects that now have some. It's a pretty cool initiative. So let's take a look at some of them, starting with, I think, the one that a lot of us will be very excited about, the Boots of the Gilded Path. Why are these good? Well, do you remember Bear Tartar? Do you remember how he got in trouble with the Fun Police and how we didn't really like that? Well, this is not as powerful, but it's kind of similar. Looting gold will increase movement speed by 30% for 6 seconds. Now, if you combine this with a fast looting add-on, and then maybe say what Leatrix Plus does, and then a looterang, so you can, loot without having to click on enemies, then you basically have a consistent speed boost when you're running through old content. Next, we've got the Crest of Paku, which will teleport you to one of the Paku totems around Zandalar, which is pretty handy. For the engineers, we've got 2 bits of loot. There's the High Tinkerer's Cape, which increases engineering by 5, and the Mech Jockey's Grips, which increases engineering mount speeds by 20%. We then have some new sets. Yes, sets. The Seal of the Zandalari Empire and the Loa Exultant Shroud increase your main stat by 150 when in Zandalar, so it's a really nice boost to doing your world content. Then you've got the Lord Admiral's Signet and Dalen Proudmoore's Saber. These cause your auto attacks to do frost damage and reduce your target's movement speed by 10% for 4 seconds, and I believe it stacks up. So while these are not going to turn the world upside down, these are examples of bits of loot that actually have fun secondary effects. It's the type of thing that you're likely going to care about them regardless of performance. Things like those boots. People are going to care about those for a long time, and maybe you could use those boots as a part of, say, a speed set. there's a lot of potential to make armor that is interesting that players want to target because of that effect. And this is a really cool thing because regardless of what the current raid is, that's still a desirable effect to have. And it's also nice to see some small sets being added. Of course, balance concerns about that aside, it's nice to see they're working some of that back in. So overall, I think this is a pretty great little initiative, and I'm glad Blizzard are doing it, and I'd absolutely love to see more. Next up, let's take a look at the new AZERITE though, because it's finally there on the PTR in action. Of course, BFA Season 2 AZERITE gear has a new outer ring in addition to the existing one, and I expect to see that open up with the Siege of Dazar'alor raid. So when patch 8.1 comes out, like, you won't see this stuff on Mythic Plus gear, you'll only see this once the Siege raid comes out, once that's a current raid, and that's likely going to be unlocked, with patch 8.1.5 if it's following the Legion pattern. But looking at things anyway, you've got your 5th ring, there it is. You've got 2 choices for each spec, and they're from the overall pool of traits. The 4th ring is as it is, and with the 3 spec choices in the generic one, and then the inner three rings are pretty much the same as there really is now. It's a lot of stuff. It's really busy from a UI perspective, and without any changes to reforging, when I look at this, I'm kind of worried that this is going to really increase the demand on reforging. And from a complexity standpoint, it's a lot of choices to make. Part of me kind of worries that it's a little bit too much, or that Blizzard are making so much exponential complexity that their real goal is to make something so complex that it puts raid bots out of business, because it just costs too much to sim all of those choices. Okay, that's definitely not the case, but I suppose it is interesting that they're adding so much to this AZERITE gear, and then of course, you're going to have 3 bits of AZERITE gear, and I believe they also, maybe in 8.2 or 8.3, want to add stuff to your Heart of Azeroth, so that's a lot of customization, that's a lot of stuff going on. I kind of wonder if it's a bit much in comparison to what we kind of used to have in that stead. I mean, to be honest, it doesn't impact me that much, but if you are going high-end, I would really love to hear what you think about this system. But next though, it would not be the news if we didn't dip into a little bit of the drama, the talk of the town. So, Blizzard co-founder Alan Adam confirmed that the company has multiple mobile projects spanning all IPs, with some of their top developers being involved. So, Alan, I don't know if this might have been the right thing to say just this very moment. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong to develop things for mobile. Instead, what I'm saying is that it may not be the best hand to play right now. The optics aren't great, which means that playing that hand is not tactically useful. And I know that saying that sounds a bit disconnected and evil, but kind of in this age of memes, and I mean that in the original definition, so that is meme as derived from gene, sort of talking about how ideas spread. Narrative kind of trumps reality sometimes because of how those mechanics work. So, this kind of feeds into a narrative that I don't think is that useful to Blizzard's end goal, which is, of course, releasing these mobile games and having them do well. Now, first, they constantly say they have multiple Diablo projects from multiple teams. And, I don't think that anyone who was really thinking about the situation in a non-reactive fashion believes that Immortal was taking the place of D4. Indeed, Jason Schreier's recent reporting does suggest that they actually created a short announcement video for D4 and then either pulled it from BlizzCon late in the day or planned to reveal it at a later date. That would have made so much sense for Blizzard. Come on. Even if they had have just revealed a logo with 0 gameplay and nothing else. And you know who's great at doing this? Bethesda. Fallout Shelter was sandwiched between other announcements. Fallout 76, with that, they correctly anticipated the likely criticisms of that project, and they wisely also teased Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield. And they did the same thing for Elder Scrolls Blades. So, to be honest, it probably would have been best to announce Immortal in that fashion, or at maybe the September or October Apple events, or maybe the Razer Phone 2 event. I think that would not have been unexpected. People know that Blizzard have mobile games in the works, and while there still would be dislikes, I don't think the cultural wave of backlash would have been as present. Now, as for there being multiple projects spanning all IPs, including things worked on by top developers, well, I've got to wonder if Hearthstone counts as one for Warcraft. If that's not the case, then there's very likely another game for Warcraft. Now, it could be the pet battle game that everyone wants, but, Warcraft's massive in China. The Warcraft movie actually kind of avoided market failure because of China. The Chinese love Warcraft, and they also love mobile free-to-play games as a market, from what I understand. So, you know, Warcraft could map onto just about any of the mobile strategy role-playing game archetypes that are out there, or maybe even something that's like Lineage 2 Revolution. Ultimately, though, I think that these are kind of doomed to fail from a PR perspective. The core Blizzard IPs are not known for being free-to-play with that sort of microtransaction. Now, those that do, Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm, they have done so by copying established free-to-play formats that consumers already accepted, that of the MOBA and the collectible card game. So Blizzard kind of got that for free. Suffice to say, if they're doing other things, they might face a lot of resistance. And, you know, perhaps it's kind of... Well, look, here's the thing. Blizzard used to have an uncompromising commitment to quality and respect for their customers. And you know what, they probably still do, like as people. But free-to-play mobile games could not be further from what Blizzard established themselves on, especially given how mobile games tend to be done in this day and age. Now then, working with companies like NetEase, there's problems with optics, and many Western companies who, you know, they obviously want to make money off the Chinese market, but from the perspective of their existing customer base, it is often a hard sell. Blizzard need to tread carefully here. Narrative is kind of everything in this new connected world, and Blizzard's narrative, their company's story, always seems to have been a really positive one. But the thing is, if they are seen to betray their core values, the reasons why customers loved them and supported them, that's a really big risk, and I think they really need to watch out and tread carefully. So there you go, that's the news. I know things got a little bit low there, but I think we do need to go there sometimes and talk about those hard things, because I think if we talk about the hard things in a reasonable, calm manner, it kind of means we can make progress instead of the kind of, you know, noisy, more troublesome version. As for the other stuff though, that leveling XP nerf, man, that is really interesting to me. I mean, tactically, from what Blizzard are doing, I think it's interesting. I also think players are going to like it a lot. It does seem like that 60 to 80 bracket was holding players back. Now it won't be, and I think that's going to be really quite well received. So yeah, I mean, hey, beta for AZERITE is going to be over on the 12th of December, I suppose. And hey, that's a pretty good thing. 8.1 really does make BFA a lot better. It still is BFA, so if you don't like the core of BFA, you're still not going to love it, but it is a far better version of BFA. That, I think, is something that we can all agree on. Of course, a massive thank you to Massdrop for sponsoring this video. They've been a brilliant brand to work with. And, you know, it's actually nice for me personally because I've been a customer of theirs for years. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, look, if you like mechanical keyboards like I do, don't go to their mechanical keyboard section because they have lots of shiny things that are really tempting and really cool. But, yeah, if you want to help the channel and also show them some love, check out that link down below. The new 4CDC is pretty damn awesome. But with that though, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you thought about the stuff we were discussing in today's video down below. And with that, I will see you next time.